Alright guys, gals, and everything in between. I know I'm getting this video out a little late to you, but I completely fell asleep and all that cool stuff after the episode. Not because the episode was boring, but just because I have been a really busy man, and so that's why. I apologize, and I'm getting this video out to you even though the temptation is killing me because Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain just came out and I want to binge play that, but no. Strain comes first because I love ya. The latest episode of The Strain is called Intruders, and we open up with a shot of Eichorst teaching Kelly how to look more human again. Which I think is interesting that they show that you have to learn this. I don't remember that in the books. I mean, it probably happened at some point, but it's a detail that was never really addressed too much of. But you get to see her, like, how her hand is twitching, and I really like that because it shows that it's not like the master just goes, bing, you have all your memories and history back. No, you have to actually slowly sort of grow up in a way. At first, I was really wary with this episode because I was afraid it was slowly kind of starting to drag a little bit in the beginning where I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. And I'm so happy that it ended up working in the end. I mean, it wasn't one of my favorite episodes of the season, but it was definitely a really good episode because you had that sort of slow build, but it wasn't necessarily that there wasn't action happening. It's just I felt like there was a bit of a stumble in maybe the writing or something like that in the beginning. But, I mean, you got to see Kelly relearning, and that was cool. But where it really hit good for me, where I was like, okay, now we're back to the Strain. Truly, we're back. Gus and Angel are driving out to this warehouse, and they're talking to each other, and it's Gus and Angel talking about God, and why would God have this happen? And I was sitting there, I was like, that is one of the most intelligent and sort of just different conversations that this show has had in a while. And it was a breath of fresh air, and I liked seeing that Gus and Angel are talking about, like, philosophy and, like, theology and why would God punish us this way, or why wouldn't he step in and do something? And I believe it was Angel basically said, because, you know, maybe we deserve this. And I think it was a very interesting conversation that I want to see delved into further. Because you get to sort of see the human element with that, and I really like the characters in The Strain. That's one of the reasons it's one of my favorite shows on television, is because the characters are so dang relatable. Now, on an opposite segue to that, F has to perform surgery on an arms dealer, and we get back to that old Zack again. I have to just say, please, can we stick to the Zack that we loved from before? That is getting really frustrating for me, is Zack, because Zack has always been a great character, and then all of a sudden it's like they don't know how they want to write him. Granted, in the source material, he has a very distinct path, and as long as they really kind of get to the end game of that, I'm okay with Zack more or less. He irritates me, but it's not enough that I can't just be like, you know, nope, just changing the channel anytime Zack's on. It just disturbs my head after we see, like, Coco and Eldritch Palmer wake up together. She's really trying to get into his head, and you can see that she's suspicious that maybe he has something going on with the Strigoi, but he's of course not going to admit it, and so she's trying to get closer to him. It's gross seeing Eldritch Palmer and Coco, but at the same time, I buy it. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I buy the fact that this secretary is really trying to get information out of him. I feel like she has something else going on in her head, because I don't remember Coco in the books. So I'm pretty sure that is a TV exclusive character. Just like how Vaughn was a TV exclusive character. Hence why I'm pretty sure, sorry guys, it makes me sad too, Vaughn's pretty much dead. Yeah, we never saw them die, so in theory they could still be alive, but they're all basically saying when Vaughn died. And I'm sad because Vaughn, they never said his name in the first season, so I thought it was Quinlan the whole time. Then all of a sudden I was like, well, that isn't how Quinlan was. And so then all of a sudden they bring in the real Quinlan, and he's awesome, and he's still awesome. I love how he's sitting there. He's like, by the time you pull the trigger, you're gonna be dead. So Gus pulls the trigger, and Quinlan just jumps over and lunges and gets him with the super speed. I love seeing the Strigoi with the extreme amounts of speed. I think it's just the way they do it, yes, it's been done in other shows before, but I think it's a very visually interesting spectacle, per se. And then the back and forth between the forces of good and evil is, of course, primarily in this episode through the Oxidolumin, where Satrakian's like, I have a client who's going to bid this much, and they're in a bidding war. And in the books, no spoilers, but there was an actual auction that they went to, and that they all had to deal with, but I'm pretty sure this is sort of just a way to make it a little different on TV. But I loved what happened afterwards, is where they go to the church. It's like, oh, we're going to steal it from him. And then Fett's like, ooh, this is going to be fun. And then you get to see Eichorst and Eldridge Palmer and all of them saying, well, we want it. So you get to see these two sides of what they're planning. And this was my favorite part of the episode in terms of tension, is where you see Eichorst and they're moving in, and then you see Satrakian and Fett and they're moving in, and they're all converging at once, and the Cardinal's being attacked by the Strigoi. So Satrakian, of course, goes in there and they fight against Eichorst. And Eichorst shows his extreme speed, and then Fett uses the light grenade, and Eichorst gets away in the nick of time. I think that little flurry of action was one of the most intense parts in the show so far, and it was really interesting. And then that's how Satrakian gets his information of that is willing to set the guy free. And I love it when Satrakian does that kind of stuff where he's like, then I'll set you free. And you just see him like getting ready to behead, and he does, and it's so cool. They really know how to make Satrakian stuff look awesome. Kelly, of course, is sneaking through, and you can tell the Master's working really hard to keep Kelly's identity safe, because they were trying to test him at the border, and some Strigoi popped out of another car, and you can tell that that's definitely got the Master's hands in it, saying, I need to get this person through. It shows a tactical side of this, which I think they don't really show in many TV shows, like a sci-fi, like a zombie apocalypse or a vampire apocalypse type scenario, where you don't see it as a tactical war. And I like these little nuances that they're giving, that this is literally a war between vampires and humans, and they each have their own strengths and weaknesses. And I like seeing that, because it's like a battle of the species. Or like the two most dominant species on the planet are now clashing. And I think that's really cool. Especially because of the idea that it was a close call and they got through still. And this allows Kelly and the Feelers to break into the apartment. Now at this point, I don't feel like I need to touch on it too much. Basically, Nora's kind of had an idea this whole time about F's shenanigans, shall we say, and he admits to it to her off camera, and she's like, well, thanks for telling me. And it's so creepy. Oh my god, guys, you have no idea. Like, when I'm reading the book and Kelly pops through the window, you're reading a book and you're like, oh wow, that's visually creepy in my head, like, cool. When you're watching it on screen and it looks real, you have that fear in your head that you naturally have, that there is going to be something breaking through, and that is one of the best parts of the episode by far. I'm saying that about a lot, but there's a really good, strong chunk of this episode, and that's where it all converges, is because then stupid Zach opens the door, and I'm like, are you related to the people from No Escape? Like the children from No Escape, are you related to them? He was being so stupid, and of course she breaks in, and I love how she's taunting F, and the Feelers are sneaking through, and you're just like, ugh! and they're unloading on each other, and there's lots of gunfights, and they're slashing at each other, and then ultimately Zach actually sees his mother for what she really is in a close call battle against his father. I feel like that really could nail the coffin and the obnoxious Zach, but the entire episode you think that they're going to take Zach because of the way it looks, and I think that's a great tension. One thing I love that this show does is where characters are looking off and then you see stuff moving in the background. It builds this tension. That's one thing that a lot of shows and movies don't do, is they don't build the tension. So then when the action actually happens, it is so much more satisfying, even in small doses. And this show is really good at that. And that's probably actually one of my favorite moments of this show, is because it builds that suspense where they're walking around, they're looking for it. Then the action happens, and it's so satisfying that I was like, I got my action fix, I got my drama fix, and it just all melded together. While I don't think this was one of the stronger episodes of the season, I definitely think it's great. I want to see this show keep climbing in the ratings. I want the word to be spread about The Strain, that it's such a great show. I think that this episode is an important bridging the gap episode, but there is a lot still to cover, so I can kind of see why probably season 3 will still cover this same story arc. But I still can't see where the end game is going to be for this season. Alright, guys, gals, and everything in between, what did you think of this latest episode? And are you going to be tuning in next week? And how often do you tell other people to watch the show? Because I want word to spread on this show. So let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be here next week for the next episode of The Strain.